Hi, this is Greg McIntyre along with,
Brenton Begley.
and we are attorneys at McIntyre Elder Law. All we practice is estate planning and elder law. That's all we do. And we're talking about today, what should I do when my loved one dies? Who should I listen to? And I have some recent experience with this. I always learn so much from my day-to-day practice. And so I'm at a funeral, right? Okay. It was not a fun time, right? Great funeral, loved one passed. And, the funeral director is giving out like a folder and information advice within the folder on what to do with your estate plan, like what to do with your estate when your loved one passes away. And I'm reading through this and I'm horrified. I'm like, oh my God, who would go to their funeral director, right? Their embalmer, the
For legal
burial guy, who would go to that person for legal advice?
Right. You don't even go to an attorney who dresses like a funeral director. Some dudes, by the way. The other day, I kind of had a suit that looked like a funeral director. I was like, man, I probably shouldn't be wearing this.
So I thought, hey, we need to talk about this because there are people out there taking legal advice from funeral directors.
Yeah. And what's amazing to me is people be handing out legal advice all the time. People who aren't lawyers.
For free.
For free, and it's free because they ain't lawyers. And they shouldn't be doing it. But they do it.
They should not be doing it. It's actually against the law to do that.
It is.
And I wonder if that is, what that does mean when they're writing down these written instructions for folks to follow, and people are taking their advice. I'm surprised they haven't gotten sued. I mean, substantially for giving out this advice and people wrongfully following the advice.
Because that's the thing about advice too, is that, if people follow it and they believe in what you're saying, it can put them in a tough position. And we've had clients in that tough position before because they followed the advice of a attorney.
So I'm looking at an estate recently. Let's just say hypothetically, there could be an estate where, somebody thinks they have to open an estate to change ownership of the household contents in the house and maybe a vehicle or two. Well, there are other ways besides opening the estate to transfer title to a vehicle, especially a vehicle that's not worth a ton of money. Outside of the estate, there are ways to transfer the household assets without going through the court process. The court process, the probate process, which is where you take a will, or if no will, in state administration, that process, same thing, really. It's where the court actually retitles the assets or gives you the court order, the ability, the authority to retitle a bank account, a car title, a home, whatever it is. Brenton, how can you think that, if a loved one passed away, you and I could change ownership of household contents?
The thing is that typically household contents aren't worth very much. They're usually sentimental items. They don't have titles associated with them. So there's no need to have title changed through the court. And a lot of times you follow the will and you distribute the items based on the will without having to go to court and list those.
I'd say, hey, Brent, meet me at the house. We're gonna divvy up these items, right? Because they don't have a title. Many times people do that. Otherwise, if you do itemize household contents in an estate, you generally have to itemize those and value those or have those appraised.
Right. And there's, there's limited circumstances where you would do something like that, and list those items. Maybe they have value. Maybe it's like jewelry. Maybe it's like art. Maybe it's like guns, something like that. But for the most part, a lot of people don't fall into that category where they have those valuable items that really need to be listed, appraised, and all that good stuff. And here's the other thing too, is that opening an estate when you don't need to can be a bad situation because it costs money, right? It costs money to open up the estate. You have to pay the court, you have to pay final fees and all that good stuff. But here's the other thing. It opens you up to unnecessary liability, especially if you become the administrator or personal representative. I mean, you're liable to the court. You can be held in contempt for doing things wrong, not filing correctly. And it's not an easy, simple process to go through, especially if you're especially if you're apt to follow the advice of a funeral director. It could be you can get a lot of conflicting advice with respect to the estate and end up in hot water and unnecessary liability. It can be a very dangerous thing. So I think step number one here, if you find that your loved one's passed away and you're trying to figure out what to do, don't take legal advice from people who are not lawyers. Even if your aunt has opened up an estate before and she's gone through the whole process herself, she was the executor, every state's different, so you shouldn't take advice from anyone who doesn't have a law license. And so I think that's step one. That's kind of what we're getting to. What would step two be? I guess if we're not supposed to follow legal advice from people who are non-lawyers, then who should we go to?
Well, you should obviously go see me or you at McIntyre Elder Law, because we do this all the time.
Yeah.
You should come see us. You should go see a professional that does this type of work, because we're licensed to give that advice. Plus, we're going to evaluate whether a probate estate is actually necessary or not, and advise you on that. And we might save you from opening up a huge can of worms where you open yourself up to lawsuits from other family members.
Yeah,
the way they're going to sue you is in the estate.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Good point. It
blows my mind that people, they want to open that window to be sued, and they don't understand that they didn't have to open that window. They didn't have to do anything, maybe, or there were alternative ways to do it without opening up the window to getting sued.
Right.
And that's where I'm surprised that our wonderful funeral directors, who we deal with and advise on a regular basis, have not had their pants sued off yet because of bum legal advice that they gave and whatever pamphlets they're handing out that tell people to go straight to the courthouse and open up a probate estate. That is absolutely not necessarily the right thing to do.
Yeah,
case basis. Every estate is different,
and I can't tell you how much of that we deal with. I mean, just as well as I do, Greg, that the amount of prefabricated forms and advice that's out there, whether it's from a funeral director, hospital, something like that, that lead people to think that they've gotten solid legal advice or they have a solid legal document or something like that, it's infuriating, because I worry day and night about these people who are getting this advice or using these forms, these pre-filled forms that they use for like a living will or some type of contract or some type of power of attorney. It scares me. It really does, how much of that's out there. And again, it's kind of a tangent, but I'm amazed that more hospitals haven't been sued. I'm amazed that more places that hand out these forms and give out these just weird pieces of advice. Sometimes you get that from the bank too. You'll have bank tellers or bankers giving people legal advice, and it's just
financial planners are the worst.
Financial planners, my goodness.
Can I just say, financial planners out there, if anybody's watching, you're the worst.
Yes. Well, I'm not afraid to say it either.
I'll tell you to your face how bad you are at giving legal advice to your clients, by the way.
Yeah. There's a clear, bright line between giving financial advice and legal advice, and that line is crossed all the time, and it shouldn't be. And the thing is too is that you have a lot of financial planners questioning legal advice that's been given to a client in good faith based on all the research that's been done, and that's just absurd to me. It is
The
absurd.
reason they're questioning it. Why are they questioning it, Brenton? Why are they questioning the amazing plan you worked on with your client to protect maybe everything they worked for their entire life?
Well,
or,
if I'm a financial planner,
slowly move over time, let's say over a 5-10 year period, IRA qualified funds over to a trust to protect it.
Right. Okay. Great example. Great example. So if I'm a financial planner, I don't want any of my fees going down, and I have a fee-based practice, right? So if I manage your money, I get a little piece of that. Yeah.
That's right.
So I don't want to mess. I don't want to mess with my fee. I don't want anyone to mess with my fee. So if someone comes from an attorney's office to my office and they want to change around how their assets are held, that could lower my fee. I'm going to start saying, look, I have an incentive. I certainly have an incentive to start saying, oh, well, let's question what that advice is, and to kind of try to throw a wrench in the process. And that's a conflict of interest.
I want to keep all that money under my management if I'm the financial planner, so that I can keep making as much money as possible
Right.
The problem is you might be headed 100 miles per hour toward a brick wall, which might be long-term care, right?
Exactly.
And you just keep speeding toward that wall.
Exactly. And financial planners don't understand how Medicaid process works, how benefits to pay for long-term care works, how any of those federal and state laws work, because they're not attorneys. And the thing is that I would go so far as to say that having a financial planner involved in the legal planning is a conflict of interest for them if they're getting a fee from the assets that you manage. It is a conflict of interest for them because they have an inherent incentive to keep the money where it's at.
Not anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess the theme of this podcast today is don't take legal advice from anyone who's not an attorney. Please be skeptical.
I'd even go further. Should you take legal advice about medical malpractice from me?
No, because we don't practice that.
And I'm not going to give you legal. See, here's how you can tell if somebody kind of knows their area. They stay in it.
That's right. Stay in your lane.
You get outside of your area as an attorney or a non-attorney. You tell people, hey, that's not what I do.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I don't go there, right? But I know someone who's really good in that area. Let me refer you to that person. When you meet somebody who's, I want to say words that I shouldn't say in the elder law report, full of it, really, who's giving you advice on, legal advice, and they might be a financial planner or a funeral planner, they're really getting outside their area of expertise. That you're talking to someone who is going outside of their bounds, and really doesn't care about you. They just want to seem important.
Yeah, exactly. So they want to control what happens, right? So if I really care about you, if I have your best interest in mind, I'm going to refer you to a professional who can do a better job than I can. That's the thing I don't do. If I was a doctor and I'm not a neurologist, and you need a neurologist, and I work on knees, if I work on your stomach, gastroenterologist, I'm not going to say, oh yeah, by the way, let me take a look at your brain. No, I'm going to say, hey, you need to go talk to a neurologist.
But a really good doctor in their own practice area is not going to, number one, expose themselves to liability. Because that's what you're doing.
Yeah, and they took the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm.
Yeah, so they're not going to expose themselves to liability by getting outside of their practice area, right? Neither am I, and neither should funeral homes or financial planners, who again are by far the worst. Horrible used car salesmen of stocks and bonds and mutual funds who know just a little bit about a lot and espouse it as much as possible. And
Right.
it can be really detrimental if you're taking legal advice from a financial planner
or tax advice. Let's be clear about that too.
Unless
And
the financial planner is an attorney.
yeah. And then too, you hopefully they also practice as well as doing the financial planning.
Sure.
Because if they're out of practice, then I'd probably see someone who's doing it on an everyday basis. But here's the other thing: is tax advice is very complicated. I know tax is complicated. I have a master's degree in tax law, and I still look to the code. I still look to the regulations. I still Google it. I still go dive deep, watch videos to make sure I understand exactly what's going on, because the tax code is incredibly dense, incredibly complicated. So if you're taking tax advice as well from a non-tax professional, then that's a big deal, and you can end up in hot water. Even something as simple as, oh, well, you might get taxed on that if you do it. Well, don't believe it until you get it, get explained by a professional. And when we do our planning here at McIntyre Elder Law, we keep taxes in mind. That's one of the things that we keep in mind, and we're going to explain to you how it works in depth, because we don't want the liability of having a tax trap down the road. So I'm going to sit you down and I'm going to tell you, okay, here's the consequences with respect to the ability to get long-term care. Here's the consequences with respect to any other type of liability, as well as state and local tax liability. So we're going to be clear about that.
Yeah. So if you or your loved one out there needs any advice about estate planning, elder law, if a loved one passes away, I would caution you. Be careful who you take that advice from. Be careful and seek that advice from someone in the know. So from an attorney, if it's legal advice, who practices estate planning, elder law, and is familiar with the probate process. If you would like to contact 888-999-6600. Brenton, I'm looking at our magazine that's coming up too.
Dude, I love that magazine. Second volume of the Elder Law Report in magazine print form.
Yes, man. It's coming up. It's beautiful.
It really is.
It is the Elder Law Report 2021, 44 pages of great advice. And give us a call, 888-999-6600. Why that blanked for me, I don't know. Or go online to mcelderlaw.com to schedule your free consult today. Brenton, thank you for doing the Elder Law Report. I've enjoyed it this morning.
Yes, sir. Me too.
Any chance to talk about what we love to do and to please implore other professionals not to do it.
That's right.
See ya.
See ya.
Please don't wait till it's too late. Call McIntyre Elder Law.